Alright guys, so this is going to be my first ever YouTube video. This video is going to be about my coming out story. So I think it'd be really cool to start from the very beginning, or kind of like around middle school, when you kind of start, you know, kind of thinking more about, sex and like things like that. So I think it was like seventh grade. I remember I was kind of going through like a weird depression stage in my life at this time, because I remember some of my close friends that were straight, they started like dating girls. And I remember some of these guys, when I was in third grade with them, they would say things like, "Oh, like girls, like they're gross or whatever," right? And at the time, I was pretty mature for my age or whatever, and I'd be like, "You guys are dumb. Like, when we're older, we're all gonna get girlfriends. Eventually, we're gonna find the right one. We're gonna get married. We're gonna have kids." Little did I know, that wouldn't be the case for me. So seventh grade came around, and I remember some of these friends. They were twin brothers actually. They're like my best friends in third grade. They started having girlfriends, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm like, I'm sure that's gonna happen with me soon or whatever. And it wasn't happening for me. I just wasn't developing any feelings towards any girls. And I remember at that time I started thinking I actually liked guys. Like, I started watching, you know, stuff on the internet, where I would see, men engaging with each other in certain ways. And I remember I would feel guilty watching this, because, in my mind, I was thinking this isn't right. I shouldn't be watching this. And I remember actually I would try and like watch straight version of like men and women interacting. In my mind, I was thinking I was balancing it off, with the gayness with the straightness. It made sense in my mind. I don't know why. But anyways, I remember one time too, uh, the PH little logo, orange and black. I'm sure you guys know what it is. One time my aunt was using my computer. I was in seventh grade, and I don't know why, but I thought I was being slick, because I would always delete like, my browser history. But apparently, if you visit a site after a long time, it just shows up, at the top left right corner or whatever. And I was like, she was using my computer, and I was like, what the hell? I was like, why does it say PH? I was like, she better not like recognize where that's coming from. And luckily she didn't, but I was so scared at the time, because, I thought I was going to be outed. She was going to be like, what are you watching or whatever. They would like look into my computer. But luckily that didn't happen. Anyway, so I thought around this time I was kind of going through like a weird, like depressive episode in my life for a little bit. Luckily it didn't last too long. I do remember I wouldn't get out of bed for like at least a month, I would say. I was sleeping a lot, and my dad noticed it. And at one point he was like, hey, like, ¿qué te está pasando? That's Spanish for, what's going on with you? Like, I've noticed that, like, you've been like very quiet lately or whatever. I wouldn't socialize with my family. I'd just be sleeping a lot. And then, I told him, I was like being very vague about the issue. I was telling him, I'm worried. I'm worried about the future. And he's like, what do you mean? What could you possibly worried about? Like, you're only, however old you are in seventh grade. I'm just worried about the future, about what you guys might think of me and where I'll be in the future. And in my mind, I'm thinking of a future where I'm not going to have kids. I'm not going to have that life that I felt like my parents expected of me. And at the time, I actually cried. That was like one of the first times I ever cried in front of my parents. And my dad was just like, you know what? Like, he's like, don't worry about the future. Don't think about it so much. He's like, just do the best that you can right now, and whatever it is that you're doing in your life, and just let everything else fall into place. And I literally like took that like advice, and I applied it to my situation. I was like, you know what? Maybe I like guys, but I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I'm just gonna keep trying to focus and like do good in school, and then like I'm sure that will somehow in some way sort itself out. And it sounds kind of weird that I took this advice literally and applied it to my, gay situation, if you will. But it kind of worked in a weird way. I literally just like, you know what? I'm not gonna worry about this too much right now. I'm just gonna focus on my life outside of that, because that's, I'm just gonna kind of put it on the back burner for now, and continue, with my life. Continue being straight. Technically, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade. I remember at ninth grade I was super serious, like super serious. I guess because at the time I associated a lack of expressiveness with masculinity. So that was my way of trying to maintain my cover, if you will, which I think is still kind of problematic. That generally, we associate a lack of expressiveness with masculinity because that's not cool. Like, what the hell? You should be allowed to express yourself in whatever way you want without being questioned about whether or not it's feminine or masculine. You do you or whatever. But that's like another story. Anyways, so ninth grade, super serious. I think it wasn't until 10th grade that I kind of, I realized, damn, you know what? I put this thing in the back burner. I thought it was gonna kind of solve itself, but it's not solving itself. So I was like, you know what? Like, this is not going away. I thought it would, but it's not. I'm gonna have to reevaluate all of this and really think through what's gonna be my next move because it seems like this is not going away. Somehow, I think I started building up the courage to tell people. I started telling really close friends of mine, slowly but surely. I came out to like one of my girl cousins first, uh, and then I came out like to my straight guy cousin. He's like my brother, uh, and he was actually surprised, which I thought was weird. I was surprised that he was surprised, but I started coming out slowly. Uh, Once you start telling people, like, it takes off such a huge load off your shoulders, like, and it gets easier and easier. It's crazy. Sophomore year, I started slowly coming out to more of my friends, and I remember at one point I came out to like arguably like probably my closest friend at the time. I'll call him Fonzo. I won't say his real name. But he basically he's straight. He was like a straight like soccer player like in high school, like pretty straight like and everything. He was like my best friend. I would always have lunch with him, like literally every time, like since freshman, sophomore year, especially sophomore year, because I kind of gravitated a little bit away from my middle school friends, just because I was in a separate academy. Just made new friends naturally. So this person, I came out to my friend, and he was kind of like surprised. But he's like, oh, he's like, does this mean that like you're gonna start acting differently? And I'm like, no, like I'm still gonna be the same Mago, like I'm still gonna be your friend. Everything's like nothing's gonna change. This is just a part of me, but it's not like who I am. I told him I was gonna keep being the same person. And he's like, okay, cool. He's like, it seemed like he was cool being friends and staying friends. As long as I didn't start acting differently. Looking back at it, uh, I think after I started coming out more sophomore year, I just became more comfortable in my own skin slowly but surely. Soon enough, honestly, I ended up changing the way I was dressing. Uh, I guess I cared a little bit more about how I dressed. Like I started wearing like I remember I don't know why it was like my thing. I would wear like button ups and I would like be a little scandalous and like keep a button or two or three unbuttoned. Uh, and I remember I would wear like surfer necklaces for some reason, like the basic white like shell one or whatever, different ones of course, but that was my thing for some reason. And I would always like have them rolled up, like your sleeves. He started noticing that I was changing the way I was dressing, the way I was expressing myself. I was being more like more talkative, more social. Just naturally, I think that comes when you start kind of being more comfortable with yourself and who you are. Uh, and I think he kind of didn't like this because he started like gravitating away from me. We stopped having lunch together, which was honestly really hard because I didn't have like a big circle of friends at the time, especially as I was coming out, and I didn't know who the hell to have lunch with anymore. Like it was weird. Like I found myself starting to like go to classrooms to like have lunch. Like there was a whole bunch of clubs at school, and I would like have lunch like in these clubs. Honestly, part of it is because I didn't want to be like seen having lunch outside by myself. But whatever, some of the people in these like clubs were honestly like super cool. Like they're generally like more accepting and like just nicer people. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of nice people that had lunch outside, but just it's like a comfortable, safe space. I feel like so I kind of like did that for some time, and my friends started gravitating away from me, and I kind of noticed it. I kind of like at one point I brought it up to him. You know, Honestly, something happened at a certain point as well. He one day we were at a party and he was drunk. I was drunk. I was outside having a good time. Then he texted me and he's like, "Where are you?" I don't know if I should share this, but I'm gonna share it because I mean, I think it happens, and maybe we don't talk about it. And like, I think it's a part of my journey in a way. So part of like what I'm talking about in my friendship with him. So I think it's important to talk about a little bit. Long story short, at the party, he kind of wanted to experiment, and it wasn't me that wanted to. Like, he initiated everything. At the time, I hadn't really done anything with any guy, so I was like, naturally, hormones, everything. I was young, hadn't really done anything with any guy before, so I was like, yeah, like, I'm down to do something with you or whatever. So we start doing things. Midway, he freaks the hell out, and he basically, goes home. He asks his brother to pick him up, and I'm just like, hopefully I didn't ruin our friendship or whatever. Maybe I should have said no, even though he was the one to ask. Anyways, after that, he gravitated even more away from me. Like, it really sucked because after that day, he's like, hey, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And I was like, yeah, of course, like, don't even worry about it, like, as if it never happened. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Like, he already started gravitating away from me when I started changing my clothes and everything, but it became even more apparent after that happened. Also, I had to come out to another close friend of mine that I would see a lot, and I had been close friends with her since middle school. Something else happened with her. Turns out this girl started walking a lot more together, talking a lot more. And then I realized that maybe she was asking me to talk and walk with her more because she seemed interested in me. And it wasn't just like us being middle school friends anymore. We're getting older, so like, all that's going on. And I realized I think this girl like might actually like me. So I was like, you know what? Like, I know who I am. I know that I could never give her what she might want, which is, obviously a relationship with a guy, because I wouldn't be into her. Obviously, me liking men. So I decided, I'm gonna have to tell her, like, I can't let this continue for a long time. I wish I could have told her in person. I couldn't. And I didn't want this to keep dragging and for me to potentially, keep leading her on, if you will. So I decided to tell her over a long text message, and I was like, "Hey, like, you know what? Like, I'm so sorry that I don't have the courage to tell you this in person, and I'm so sorry, like, that I have to tell you this and everything. But I like guys." And then, honestly, her response was kind of a little bit surprising. I felt really bad. She said, "How can you do this to me?" You know, which kind of like at the time I didn't really blame her. She was upset. As anybody would, if something like that happened. But ideally, you don't want to make somebody feel bad when they're coming out to you. But I understand. She had feelings and everything. We're all human. So I kind of decided that maybe she just needed some space. For the next day, I literally saw her in class. She was crying, like, oh, I felt so bad. In my mind, I was like, you know what, maybe she just needs time to process this. So I just kind of let her be. We didn't really talk. A while later, maybe a few days later, a week later, something like that. She's like, just want to let you know, it's not going to change anything. We're still going to be friends. And we were still friends after that, but, it wasn't 100% the same. Like, it was definitely a little bit different. Um, and yeah, and so that happened. And then I didn't have two of my closest friends anymore. So continued to have lunch, in those classrooms, all those club activities or whatever. Fast forward to, senior year. At that point, I was even more comfortable with myself in my own skin. Continued to do my weird, button down surfer necklace thing. More of the story for the part about, my friend, my straight friend, the soccer guy, like, you know, kind of gravitating away from me after I told him this, and the girlfriend that I had that was into me, her initially being very upset with me, is that sometimes you are gonna make people upset, as you're coming out. But you know what? A big lesson that I've learned in my life, especially through my coming out experience, is that you don't want to live to make someone else happy. At the end of the day, it's going to be your life, and you want to live your life. You don't want to live a life where you're going to be making others happy if you're never going to be happy yourself. It kind of reminds me of when I came out to my parents. With them, I came out right around the time when I was coming around to my close friend sophomore year. I came out to my dad first, which is crazy, especially as a Latino. Like, I was born in Mexico. My family was born in Mexico. I'm the only son. I was the firstborn. I have two younger sisters, so coming out to my dad was a big deal. Like, it was scary. Like, if you know my dad, like, everybody would always tell me, like, dude, like, I don't know how the hell you came out to your dad. Like, he looks super intimidating. Like, it's true. He definitely can look intimidating. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna have to tell my dad because this is not sustainable. I can try to live a straight life, have this, white picket fence thing that I envisioned for myself since like third grade. But I was like, at the end of the day, like, that's not going to be sustainable. Like, I'm not going to be happy. And, maybe my dad will, maybe my mom will, but it's all going to be a facade. And at the end of the day, I realized, you know what? Like, I'd rather just, live a life where I'm happy, where it's for myself, than live a life where I'm just living to make other people happy. Uh, and so I decided to tell my dad. I remember it was on our way back from work. I used to work at a cafe, and we used to work together. I used to be a host. He used to be a cook, and we were just driving. We would like usually carpool, of course, because they're in the same place. And we were driving, and then I was like, "Hey, Dad." We were talking about something like heartfelt. I forgot what it was, but he was talking about, I think, something that had to somehow do with me coming out. So I was like, you know what? Maybe this is my perfect chance to do it. And I was like, you know what? Do it right now. And I was like, hey, Dad, like, what you just mentioned about this and that, like what it was we were talking about. I forgot what it was. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, what if I told you that I can relate to that? And then he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, there's something I have to tell you. At the time, I couldn't even bring myself to say the word gay. Like, it was like taboo. I couldn't even hear it like uttered out of my own mouth. But and I didn't even say it that way at the time. I just told them, in Spanish, like, no me gustan las mujeres, like, I don't like girls, like, I don't like women. And he just stood like silent in the car drive. He's like, okay. He's like, what? And I was like, yeah, like, I don't like girls. And he's like, en serio? I was like, yeah, like, I am. And then he kind of just stood quiet. He got really serious. I thought he was gonna scream. I thought he was gonna, you know, cuss at me in Spanish or whatever, like tell me like, what do you mean? Like, you can't be like that. But he just stood serious. He was so serious. And he started tearing, to my surprise. Like, I don't know if he was, I don't know what it was at the time. He maybe was a little disappointed. Like, it's a lot, especially, for a Mexican dad who's, only son, firstborn, tells them this. Like, it's a big deal. For those of you guys that might be, Latinos and grew up in a very traditional Catholic like household, I'm sure you guys can relate. It was a big deal telling my dad this. But like I said, at the end of the day, I thought about it long and hard, and I was gonna live my life the way I wanted to live it to be happy. And fortunately, that would mean maybe potentially hurting my dad, just like when I hurt that girl when I came out to when I maybe hurt my friend when I came out to him who had to gravitate away. But at the end of the day, you should be living your life for yourself. As I was telling you guys, so my dad stood really quiet. He teared up. I told him I was serious. He finally believed me. He did bring up like conversion therapy indirectly. I don't think he knows fully what it is, but he had heard about it from a friend or something apparently. And I told him, I was like, trust me, Dad. Like, I've tried liking girls. I just can't bring myself to do it. And when I say try, um, my attempt at having a girlfriend was, I think I asked like a friend. Um, I was like, "Hey, that girl's really cute." Like in middle school, I was like, "Can you ask her out for me?" And I think she did, but I don't really think she did. Like I saw her walk to her, but I don't remember her saying anything. And she's like, "Oh," she came back and she's like, "Oh yeah," she said she wasn't interested. And I was like, "Okay, well, I tried. Like that was my attempt at being straight, apparently." And when I say I try, I mean like like I did do some things here and there. It just wasn't working for me. It wasn't for me. I was like, I tried. And then he's like, well, there's these things where we could take you and, like they can help you or whatever. And I was like, no, Dad. I was like, I thought about that myself. I really did. Like I said, because of this white picket fence thing I envisioned for myself. So I was like, yeah, like Dad, like, no, I've thought about that. But, there's been a lot of studies that say it doesn't really work. At the end of the day, it's not something that you can really choose, something that you can change overnight. It's who you are. And then after that, we didn't really say much. We got home. My dad, I got off the car. He stayed in the car. I was kind of scared. I was like, he better not, drive off, do anything stupid or anything like that. So I went inside the house. After I noticed he wasn't coming in, I went back out just to make sure he was still there. He was just in the car. I think he needed some time to really, process everything that I have just told him. I think I went to my cousin's house. They're like, we lived in the same house kind of. And I was with them. and I had came out to them. It's my girl cousin. She's like my sister almost, and my guy cousin is like my brother. They're both older than I am. I was like, you guys aren't gonna believe this, but I just came out to my dad, and then I started crying, and they're just like being supportive. My guy cousin couldn't believe I told my dad because super machista and everything. Um, but I didn't go home right away. I didn't go see my parents right away. I just felt like it was too soon. I just didn't know what to expect when I would go home. Later on, though, eventually, I went. I was walking by the living room, saw my dad there. Didn't say anything to him. Um, I didn't talk about it with him. He didn't bring it up. The day happened. Next morning, I was like, "Hey, mom, like, did my dad tell you anything last night?" And she's like, "No, why?" And I was like, "Okay, like, so no te dijo nada, like, absolutamente nada, like, he didn't tell you absolutely anything." And she's like, "No, like, what's going on? What did you tell him?" And I was like, "Really?" Like, I was surprised that my dad didn't bring this up with my mom. So I was like, "So he didn't tell you that I'm gay?" And then she's like, she's like, "Le dijiste?" Like, you told him? And she was like, she also cried. She started tearing. Um, but then shortly after, she was like, like, la verdad, like, the truth is, I kind of had a feeling that you were, or that you could be, but I didn't want to bring it up myself. I wanted you to be the one to bring it up to me. So that was interesting. I guess, mother's instinct, like, I guess she had a feeling or whatever. But she was very surprised that I told my dad. Typically you would expect, you know, coming out to your mom first is usually easier, but I guess in my mind, I was like, let me do the hard part first. Let me get this out of the way. Like I said in the car ride, what we were talking about related in some way. I can't remember how, but it did. So I was like, let me just, get this hard part out of the way. If I can tell my dad, like, I can tell anybody. So, like, I told my dad, and then I told my mom. She told me that. She didn't bring up conversion or anything like that, but that was that. To be quite honest with you guys, after I told my parents, I told them, this is a part of me, but it's not going to change who I am. I'm still going to continue to be your son, the same person as always. But to be honest with you guys, like, since I've told my parents, especially right after I told him, we didn't really bring it up. Like, I continued to do my own thing. I continued to be super involved in school clubs, like, being like team captain of the swim team in high school, like my senior year, just super involved in school stuff, my studies, like I was getting ready to go to college and everything. So I was just doing my own thing, and my parents let me do my own thing. They weren't really super protective of me, which was nice. They weren't like, you have to be home after a certain time after I came out to them. I know sometimes that happens, unfortunately. Not to me, I'm grateful for that. My parents were pretty, even though they're very traditional, they were pretty, open in terms of just allowing me to continue to just be myself, and never really changing their attitude towards me. So I'm really grateful for that. But with that said, it's not like my relationship with them was open about my sexuality. Like, after I came out to them, it just wasn't something we talked about. Not because they were homophobic or because they just didn't want to talk about it or they were disgusted by it. A little bit is also just me, my personally, like, I just wouldn't want to talk about this with them per se. The cultural difference, generational difference, that's a big thing, not gonna lie. It took time for me to build the courage to maybe even open up slightly with them. With my mom, sometimes, she'll know if I'm talking to a guy. In college, I dated a guy for 2 years and 8 months. It was a long time. And obviously, I would bring him around and everything. I never told him I was with him, but, they're not dumb. He would sleep over and everything. Um, and at one point in college, things ended with this person, and she noticed that I started being kind of depressed and everything. And then I told her, I was like, hey, like, she's like, I was like, I have to tell you something. This is one of the first few times I really opened up with my mom since I came out. But this is way after in college, like years later, I was like, I have to tell you something. I'm not seeing this person anymore. And she's like, nah, she's like, I knew something was up. She's like, you've been different. And she knew that I changed. I was kind of going through like an episode where I was upset, obviously. I was getting over that breakup. But she's like, you know what? She's like, no te preocupes, mijo. She's like, don't worry about it. That's only one person. You're going to meet a lot more people. Like, you'll be okay. You'll get through this. And that was really cool. And it doesn't seem like a big deal to maybe some of you guys. Like, that's kind of like support for you. But it was like, even if I wasn't open with my family about my sexuality since I came out with them, that to me meant a lot. I think eventually I might have brought this up to my dad as well. I did. And he kind of said something similar. It was like an indirect way of him saying, you know what, like you'll be okay, you'll get through this. And to be quite honest with you guys, to this day, I'm not super open with my parents about my whereabouts, if I'm talking to somebody or whatever. Um, if somebody comes around, it's more serious. Like I definitely will. Probably at this point, I feel more comfortable. It's been a long time. They've been aware about this for a long time, but it's been a journey. A journey to get to the point where I potentially feel this comfortable in my own skin to talk openly with my parents. It's been years, but it's a work in progress. I guess everybody's journey is different. I'm sure there's some of you guys, that from the get go you could come to your parents about it and everything, and that's great. Not gonna lie, some of this is probably just me inhibiting it from my own end. I probably, if I tried a little more from my end, I could be a little bit more open with my mom. Just right now, it just doesn't make sense. There's nobody in my life like it's like really worth talking to about. All right, guys. So I think it'd be really helpful maybe if I like kind of sum things up. So I guess more of the story is coming out is hard. Honestly, looking back on my journey, it's crazy. Like it's crazy. Like I never would have thought that I'd be where I'm at today. Like to be quite honest with you guys, most of my close friends are queer. Like literally. Also, I went to Berkeley, and it's like a super liberal school, and it was cool because I was openly gay at Berkeley since the very beginning, which is another kind of warmth because a lot of my like gay Latino friends that went to Berkeley, went to college with me, they were not open from the get go. I was one of the few ones that was from the beginning, which is kind of cool, I think. And that's a whole different like topic we could talk about. Kind of the effects of being like first gen and like you know Latino and like going to college and kind of grappling with your sexuality and like dating in college and all that. That's like a different thing for sure. Maybe a topic for another video or something. Sometimes along the way, you might hurt people initially when you first tell them. It's not something that's easy to on people. Everybody comes from different cultural backgrounds, different upbringings, like generationally, that has a big deal to do with it. For me, like I said, growing up in a Catholic household, I grew up in Mexico. Like my parents were both born and raised in Mexico. Sometimes, like I said, my friend, the girl that I came out to, my friend that I gravitated away from, like sometimes, some people might gravitate away from you because of it. But at the end of the day, what I've learned is that what that means is that you're gonna gravitate the right people to you, and it will happen. Trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. It will happen, and you will love your life, and you'll feel amazing, and everything's gonna work out. That advice that my dad gave me, like literally, like do the best on whatever it is that you're working on, whether it's your hobbies, whether it's school, whether it's clubs, whether it's sports, whatever it is. Just do your best and all of that right now, and literally everything will fall into place. Yeah, this is my first YouTube video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Mago, yeah.